A bright afternoon, when 2 glasses of drinks had been served on the table. Meanwhile, the couple was busy exchanging saliva, until Katajiri cornered her until she sat on the floor, his hands roaming and starting to remove the girl's school uniform. However, Sachan held his shoulders, hurriedly stopping the kiss and asking for time. She apologized while wiping her lips. She was scared, and the young man tried to understand her without asking too many questions. However, immense regret appeared and haunted Katajiri until he wished he had had sex with Sachan at that time, because by doing so, he guessed there was a possibility that he would not have gotten lost on the path that brought disaster like now. The sound of the train became the background for the conversation of a pair of lovers. Katajiri scolded Sachan, who kept crying, especially since this was not a forever goodbye. Even so, Sachan couldn't help but cry, because they wouldn't be able to meet for a while. She still couldn't calm down even though her lover said he would return at the end of the year. Sachan would send letters and say she wouldn't be able to stand it if the man cheated on her. Katajiri promised he wouldn't do that, besides it was already time to go. He pulled Sachan's face so she would look at him, then patted the shoulder-length black-haired head while saying goodbye. Sachan immediately waved her hand and kept crying, as she watched her lover who was already inside the train. The announcement said the train to New Chitose Airport would depart soon. Today, Katajiri would depart for Tokyo. He left his life in the countryside to study. Katajiri touched the window glass, remembering when he told Sachan. She cried for 3 days in a row. He even begged the girl to stop crying every time she saw him. Sachan apologized, even though she knew her lover had his own path he wanted to take, but her heart still couldn't accept having to part. Katajiri asked what he should do so the girl would stop crying. At that moment, Sachan wanted letters. She didn't want messages sent online. Occasionally, if Katajiri sent something she could hold in her hand, she thought she would feel better. Sachan knew this was troublesome, but maybe she would end up sending a lot of letters because she was a high school student who didn't know how to use a phone. Katajiri realized his lover was very bad with technology, but he didn't mind because it was only occasional. Sachan immediately laughed and admitted she was very happy. After all, they had been dating for 4 years. Katajiri walked out of the station, while still thinking that if they continued in the conventional way, then most likely he would marry Sachan. He walked on the zebra crossing with other pedestrians and felt the air that was very hot here. After finishing unpacking his belongings in seconds, Katajiri fell silent staring at his residence, which looked deserted even to him. Not long after, the blowing wind brought a large bra to his balcony. He hurriedly took it and went to the neighboring building, then pressed the bell and waited for the owner to come out. At the door, Katajiri admitted he had just moved next door and some laundry from here had blown onto his balcony. A woman wearing tight clothes that showed her cleavage, long hair with water droplets still falling, and a towel draped over her shoulder. Katajiri froze, seeing a woman who seemed to have just come out of the bathroom, the scent of soap still wafting, with a bra peeking from behind her tank top and large breasts. The woman asked what she could help with, making Katajiri immediately turn his face away while handing over the package containing the laundry. He felt very embarrassed, then apologized, while confirming that the young man had just moved in today. Katajiri confirmed, also mentioning his name. She guessed Katajiri was a student, although only starting this year. In that case, she felt the young man was still 18 years old. Katajiri confirmed, until he received an intense gaze. The woman finally extended her hand, mentioning her name Shino Kanikata, and admitted she was glad to meet him. Katajiri shook her hand and said the same. His mind fell on Shino's thin, dry body, only skin and bones left. She was indeed very skinny, but her breasts were quite full. The next day, 2 young men complained about the very long study time at university, so they planned to eat ramen and invited Katajiri too. While eating ramen, Wakamoto, the bespectacled man, didn't expect that Katajiri was a village kid, just like him. He told that there were so many beautiful girls in Tokyo, it was really cool, then invited him to join as many group dates as possible and find a girlfriend. Unfortunately, Katajiri admitted he already had a lover and made them disbelieve. They felt this was unfair, because only Katajiri already had a girlfriend. Moreover, he didn't even have a photo of Sachan. Meanwhile, Katajiri's own thoughts fell on Sachan and he wondered what she was doing right now. From the mailbox, while taking the daily newspaper, Katajiri also found a letter sent by Sachan. Coincidentally, Shino was also there and commented on the envelope with a cute design. The young man immediately turned his head in surprise. He also said the letter was from his girlfriend when Shino asked with a curious gaze. After being silent for quite a while, suddenly the woman said that Katajiri was still a virgin, because he emitted that kind of aura. The young man stubbornly admitted he had a girlfriend. So, Shino knew Sachan didn't want to let go of her virginity. She also felt sorry for him. She approached while touching Katajiri's chest. If he wanted, Shino admitted she could help with that. The young man remained still, making Shino immediately step back while laughing and admitting she was just joking. Katajiri said it was really a disgusting joke. He then complained to Sachan, who was far away, about so many different kinds of people in Tokyo. The two young men again complained because they couldn't follow the professor's lecture and felt they would fail. Wakamoto added with his soft voice like a lullaby. Katajiri just laughed in response while following their steps. Suddenly he saw Shino was with several cats. He turned to see what she was doing, then waved when parting with his two friends. His steps continued approaching Shino. The girl didn't like being called Miss Kanikita. Finally Katajiri called her Shino and asked what she was doing. Apparently this was a good place for the cats. She knew Katajiri was on his way home from class. She also said the young man looked very bored when laughing. Katajiri immediately focused on her. Shino guessed he behaved like that towards Sachan too. So, Katajiri said Shino was the most entitled to speak. Back when Sachan laughed while they enjoyed ice cream and sat on the stairs, he didn't even understand why his girlfriend was laughing. The girl said, Katajiri always acted so cool, but sometimes laughed softly just for her. Katajiri himself didn't realize it, but Sachan liked how his facial expression was at that time. Even her cheeks blushed when saying it. He realized that right now Shino was in front of him. The girl felt many people had said that she had no facial expression at all. Katajiri didn't understand their conversation and was very confused. Katajiri read Sachan's letter, which seemed to worry about his stomach. The girl was afraid her lover wasn't eating properly. So, she sent an easy-to-make recipe, namely stir-fried pork and ginger that was time-saving, and only used 2 ingredients, sliced pork and onions, until the young man wondered how long it would take to cook it. Besides that, he also opened a package from his parents. At the same time, the doorbell of his house rang. He went out and got Shino coming with a face that looked like an elementary school boy. Shino told that there was a cat stuck in a tree and she climbed with a shirt and knee-length skirt. Katajiri said the girl should clean her wounds. He reached into his pants pocket and took out a plaster and sterile gauze. He always prepared them because his girlfriend often fell. Shino took the sterile gauze and cleaned the wound on her cheek, then asked Katajiri to help stick the plaster. The young man just obeyed. He apologized when he heard her complain. Shino admitted it was okay and thanked him. Katajiri sat while holding a pen in his left hand. He was ready to write until Sachan's smiling shadow greeted his mind. When writing these words for Sachan, he was thinking of another woman. At that moment, he saw Shino kissing a man in front of her house. The man said goodbye and seemed to be back in 2 or 3 months. It was just a short caress. Shino was heard refusing to go home and admitting she preferred to be here. The man with a mole under his right eye greeted Katajiri. He introduced his name Kanikita from House 201 and admitted he was glad to meet him. Katajiri remained still because House 201 was the neighbor next door. Kanikita also thanked Katajiri for taking care of his wife. He himself admitted he was rarely in Japan because of work. After seeing the man leave with his car from the balcony, Katajiri confirmed that Shino was married and the woman immediately confirmed it. He then remembered the statement of the woman beside him who admitted she could help him in terms of sexuality. He couldn't believe Shino said that even though she already had a husband. Shino said Katajiri didn't always take her seriously, then asked if he liked his girlfriend. Katajiri affirmed he wouldn't date her if he didn't like her, but he couldn't answer when asked if he loved her. Actually, he didn't know what Shino wanted to hear from his confession. Shino turned around and opened the door while admitting she was curious. but she changed the subject to the increasingly cold air. Just because Katajiri had a clearly defined relationship, it didn't mean the two of them loved each other. Shino sat on the floor as if waiting. Katajiri, who didn't understand the woman, started to approach. Shino said if he stepped through the door, Katajiri might soon find out. The young man then really entered her house. In his letter, Katajiri told Sachan that it had been 8 months since he first moved. Tokyo had a very mild winter. Katajiri also confessed that he had had sexual relations inside that house with a married woman. The next morning, Katajiri carried his shirt and put it on at the edge of the bed. Shino came with 2 cups of drinks whose aroma had arrived first while saying good morning. She handed the cup in her right hand and asked how Katajiri felt. The young man felt like trash. Even so, Shino admitted Katajiri was a bit rough, but felt very happy. She sat in front of Katajiri while sipping her hot drink. She said today would feel cold. Katajiri sipped his drink, bowed his head wearily, and confirmed it. Meanwhile elsewhere, snow had started to fall covering plants and roads. Sachan laughed happily while holding an envelope with a cat picture, and sat at the study table. This stationery was really adorable. She was happy she had brought it. She kept laughing cheerfully, especially remembering she would meet Katajiri at the end of this year. Her gaze to the right, staring at the snow racing each other towards the ground from the window. She wondered what her lover would write in the next letter. At the end of the stairs, Shino met Katajiri and immediately said good morning. The young man replied, but his main goal was still to throw out the trash. Shino stepped towards the stairs and asked if the young man was coming today. Katajiri turned his head and admitted he would stop by. In his letter, he also told Sachan that he had a secret that could never be told to her. It was about him continuing the relationship with Shino. Short greetings. Today's menu. Tomorrow's weather. Until recently, that was just greetings and short conversations a few times a month. However, even since that day, unspoken promises about sex were implied, after casual conversation. No one ever refused the invitation and just went with the flow. Katajiri stopped when he saw a different bra. Shino immediately explained that her bra now had a hook at the front. However, the young man refused when offered to try removing it. Shino was like a reflection of Katajiri himself. They were exactly the same. After bathing, with a towel still draped over his shoulder, Katajiri pulled a book from the shelf. Apparently it was a book Shino used for work some time ago. The book was about architectural design. Before finishing his sentence about the book in his hand, Shino, who was sitting with her chin propped up, also asked if he would go home for the New Year holiday, especially since Katajiri's family didn't live here. Meanwhile, Shino herself would stay here as usual. Her boyfriend must feel lonely. She asked Katajiri to make sure to meet her. The young man just agreed. Sachan immediately became happy when she received a message from Katajiri. Osanai Sachi. Haruka, who was sitting next to her, already knew they were in a long-distance relationship. She also told that her lover would come home at the end of the year. It had been about 8 months since they last met him. The male friend behind them cheered because Sachan and her lover almost never met at all. Sachan admitted they just couldn't match schedules. In that case, Kaido teased Sachan, who would definitely be very excited to make love. But the long-haired girl next to her immediately said she would beat the blonde young man until he fainted and told him to stop talking about it. Even though at home she often talked about awkward locations, but that was why they chose to live alone. Sachan peaked hearing their conversation. Haruka said she would really punch him. The young man became even happier and teased her not to be shy, until his cheek was really pulled. However, Sachan really didn't understand what they called making love. The conversation continued to the cafeteria, until they knew that Sachan had never had sexual relations with her lover. No one expected it. Even though Sachan and Katajiri had been dating for a very long time, they guessed Katajiri was abstaining from sex or something. Sachan denied and explained that there was one incident in high school, the atmosphere was perfect, but she was scared and said no. Since then, Katajiri was very attentive and also didn't approach too much. They felt sorry for Katajiri. Kaido was really very sympathetic to him, because Sachan's lover was still 20 years old and was at the peak of his sexual desire. If it were him, he admitted he would definitely cheat. He stubbornly said that while they were talking, Katajiri was in Tokyo playing hide and seek with another girl. Haruka hit Kaito with a book to stop him. He then apologized and asked Sachan not to think about what the young man said. Sachan didn't mind, besides according to her, her lover couldn't possibly cheat. Even on Valentine's Day, Katajiri received chocolate from another woman. It was really annoying when Sachan saw it. But the young man refused and admitted he already had a girlfriend. They were very excited. Kaito also advised that the two of them should proceed at their own pace. Sachan held the drink can. She was still thinking about sexual relations, and wondered if she was making Katajiri suffer by waiting. Katajiri commented on Shino, who hadn't eaten anything, but the woman admitted she was very lethargic and thought she would eat tomorrow. She also praised Katajiri, who was indeed very persistent, until it made her very tired. The young man apologized. Shino thought he was too excited welcoming the end of the year. She also refused when Katajiri offered to buy something and instead asked to be made something with whatever was in the fridge. Unfortunately, Katajiri couldn't cook. However, Shino still begged, even if it was just a simple dish. The young man finally hurriedly checked the contents of the fridge. He then remembered the healthy food recipe given by Sachan and thought he could make something. Shino couldn't believe the young man would really cook for her, even though she was the one who asked first. It turned out Katajiri was very good at taking care of others. The young man took tomatoes and moved to the stove. If he didn't take care of Shino, he admitted he was worried the woman would slowly become skin and bones. Shino complained because the impression of her was very bad. But she laughed. She became curious how many years it had been since she last ate home-cooked food. The reason why Katajiri was so attracted to Shino was because she was very similar to him. Shino watched Katajiri while sitting on the sofa, making the young man ask her not to expect too much. Katajiri wrote in his letter to Sachan that there was a void he felt. The search for someone or something. Trying to find it by all means. By spending time with Shino, he realized that all this time he had been too wary. He was sure there was already a lot of snow in his girlfriend's hometown. He also wondered what gift he should buy for Sachan from Tokyo. A girl walked hurriedly and occasionally bumped into people, making her immediately apologize. She sighed, making her breath visible in winter. There were so many people here. Sachan was stunned, not believing she had managed to reach Tokyo. She really missed meeting Katajiri again. Sachan ordered hot chocolate with a confused expression, weighing the glass size she would order, but then said she wanted the smallest size, priced at 260 yen. She opened her wallet. At the same time she was startled because the coins clinked and jingled, falling to the floor, making her even more nervous. The hot chocolate had been served, but she forgot the price. Luckily, the waiter was friendly and repeated telling the price. Sachan sighed while holding the hot chocolate in both hands. Wherever she looked, Tokyo was always so stylish. She was proud because her lover lived in an amazing city. She was sure Katajiri would be surprised to see her come. She also hoped it wouldn't be too troublesome for him. Now her gaze shifted to the contents of her wallet full of coins. When Sachan told Haruka about her plan to meet her lover, the long-haired girl looked incredulous if her best friend would go to Tokyo alone, even though Sachan was already 20 years old. After listening to what Haruka and her lover said yesterday, she decided to be more proactive and realized that maybe all this time she had been too passive. Haruka asked if Sachan knew what it meant to visit a boyfriend who lived alone. The girl immediately answered confidently. Haruka couldn't stop her. In that case, she gave a farewell gift for Sachan and placed it right in the palm of her hand. Sachan immediately froze when she saw the package labeled condom. Haruka gave it because she felt women should also bring this. Kaito, who had just arrived, admitted he was surprised to see Haruka carrying something like that. Sachan finally turned her head. Apparently, Kaito also had one for Sachan. He reasoned he only brought it because he was curious. The two girls became even more confused. But Kaito added that Sachan would have problems if Katajiri needed a very large size. Sachan stared at them with tomato-red cheeks, because she realized men even had different sizes. She glanced at the wall clock because the departure time was almost here. As usual, Katajiri's two friends complained about the lessons at university. They never expected study time would last until Sunday. Thank goodness it was finally over. Tomorrow night was Christmas Eve. Nothing could beat the emptiness felt when walking around the city with such a thick Christmas atmosphere. They felt this had become something unreasonable since November. However, for them Katajiri was very lucky because he had a girlfriend and they guessed the two would meet on Christmas Eve. Katajiri denied and admitted he would go home on the 25th. Besides, he thought they also celebrated the 24th. However, Wakamoto had the impression that couples usually dated on the 25th. He apologized because he had experienced gloomy Christmas for millions of years now, so he didn't know when to celebrate it. Meanwhile, the black-haired young man named Seiko admitted, in the past he always went out on the 24th. That made the bespectacled one annoyed because it seemed like in the past the young man had a partner. Seiko could only apologize. Meanwhile, Katajiri thought to ask this to Sachan next time. The current situation, Sachan had gotten lost. She was really confused until she felt there was no hope at all and regretted that she should have brought a paper map. While Sachan didn't know how to use phone applications, a woman wearing heels approached and offered help. Shino asked what happened. Sachan, who was squatting desperately, finally turned her head, her mind praising Shino's beauty. She was then taken to the apartment room. When Katajiri climbed the stairs, Shino, who was at the end, called and said he came right on time. The young man didn't understand, but then Sachan called, laughed and informed him of her arrival to meet Katajiri. After being in front of him, she apologized. Sachan explained she started winter vacation earlier, so she thought of meeting him. However, she had even run out of words, because she was a bit carried away by the atmosphere. Sachan knew this was too sudden, but she had already found a place to stay alone. Katajiri stroked the girl's very cold cheek. He knew Sachan had walked all the way here, so he quickly invited her in, ignoring Shino, who stood silently behind his girlfriend. Before that, Sachan immediately rushed into his embrace and admitted she really missed him. Seeing them hugging, Shino's eyes stared sharper, then commented that Katajiri's girlfriend was very sweet. Sachan was immediately surprised. She forgot there was someone else between them. She then immediately shouted while thanking the woman for her help. Shino really saved her. Shino admitted she didn't mind and felt happy to meet Sachan. She then said goodbye to Katajiri and his girlfriend, making Sachan bow respectfully while continuing to thank her. Sachan openly praised Shino to Katajiri, also explained the situation about her getting lost. Then Shino came over and helped her. Katajiri understood. He said he would definitely pick her up if Sachan asked. Even though he spoke like that, his gaze continued to be fixed on Shino's house door, making Sachan feel strange. Katajiri inserted the key into his house door and invited Sachan in. The girl just obeyed. Katajiri tasted Sachan's cooking and called it very delicious, making the girl cheer happily. Cooking for others was much more fun for her. She made a lot and asked her lover to eat as much as possible. Especially Sachan's suitcase was packed with vegetables, because her mother told her to bring all this. She laughed happily and admitted she was very happy now. A few hours later, her chest pounded hard because the day was getting late. Katajiri, who had just come out of the bathroom, with a towel still draped over his shoulder, asked if the clothes Sachan was wearing already fit. The girl immediately turned around while agreeing and thanking him. She also apologized for forgetting to bring pajamas. They fell silent. Sachan called Katajiri in her heart with a frozen body, because her lover now looked very mature. The young man allowed Sachan to use the bed, while he would sleep on the summer folding mattress. Sachan couldn't bear it because her lover would be cold. She then offered to use it, but Katajiri admitted it was okay. In that case, with difficulty, Sachan invited him to sleep together. Katajiri looked at her. Sachan closed her eyes because her chest kept pounding hard. The young man stroked the top of the girl's head and told her not to worry. He didn't want Sachan to force herself too much. He walked out while saying good night, and at the same time turning off the lights. Katajiri asked if Sachan was ready to sleep, but there was no answer. The next day, Sachan hurriedly returned inside the house because something was left behind, so Katajiri told her not to rush. The girl was very panicked, looking for her wallet while continuing to laugh happily. She was very excited and didn't expect Katajiri to invite her on a Christmas date. Last night Katajiri invited her to go choose Sachan's gift herself, because he hadn't bought anything yet. Sachan arrived in the room, her gaze scanning, guessing the possibility that her wallet was tucked away. However, the condom package appeared between the pile of books. She remembered when Kaito said Sachan would face problems if Katajiri needed a large size. However, the information on the package was medium size. Katajiri, who had been waiting a long time, finally peeked into the room and asked what his girlfriend was doing. But what he saw, Sachan was opening the hook of her bra. Sachan turned around with her hands still holding the bra on her chest. Katajiri asked what happened. The girl apologized for rejecting him at that time, but now she was fine, because she really loved Katajiri. She didn't mind whatever the young man wanted with her. Katajiri was surprised to see Sachan throw the bra to the floor and hug him. She begged him not to look for other girls, her hands trembling as she gripped the young man's coat. Katajiri didn't know what the girl was talking about until his eyes caught the condom package in the pile of books, then explained that one of his friends left it there, just as a joke. Sachan immediately panicked and believed Katajiri's reason, that it wasn't his. The young man opened his coat and covered his girlfriend's body, then hugged her again. This was the first time. All this time he had never lied to Sachan. Katajiri apologized if it made her feel uncomfortable. He didn't want to part with Sachan just because they had never had sexual relations. He asked the girl not to panic and told her to calm down first. Katajiri really wanted to hug and make love with Sachan. He didn't want to part with her, but the girl was trembling so much. He wanted to know what feelings would arise in him when hugging Sachan. After calming down and the two released the hug, Sachan in turn apologized for saying strange things like that. Katajiri wondered why Sachan liked him. Now he asked the girl to put her clothes back on, because it was time for a date. Sachan obeyed. Katajiri invited Sachan to the city center, because he heard there was a light show at the end of the street there. They still had time until the lights were turned on, so he invited Sachan to have dinner first. Katajiri saw a girl wearing a Santa outfit lifting 2 cardboard boxes. The grip was swaying and the top box was almost falling, so he helped align it. Misuzu turned her head and thanked him sarcastically, even clicking her tongue, making him surprised. However, he returned to Sachan and invited her to go. The girl was really very annoyed and kept grumbling. The Christmas tree in the middle of the city started to be lit, making Sachan click in amazement at its very large size. She cheered because she had never seen a Christmas tree this big before. Katajiri turned his head. He was a little aware of it, but even though Sachan was standing right in front of his eyes, honestly he didn't feel too guilty for having lied. His hand pulled the girl, then kissed her, making Sachan nervous about what her lover was doing in a place like this. Katajiri said it had been a very long time and finally he realized he hadn't kissed her. It wasn't that Sachan didn't like it, but usually Katajiri didn't do that in public. Her cheeks were even blazing red now. The young man invited Sachan to stay here for New Year, so they could celebrate it together in Tokyo. However, Sachan said they couldn't do it, because Katajiri had not been home for a long time. Besides that, the young man's father must be very excited to meet her. Moreover, her lover had already brought the ticket. Katajiri confirmed it. Even so, Sachan admitted she was very happy that Katajiri asked her to stay. Next year, she invited her lover to spend New Year's Eve together. Katajiri realized he had made himself sick, but it was indeed according to his guess. Katajiri opened the door and it turned out Sachan was already fast asleep. The more he saw Sachan's boundless kindness, the longer he looked at her face, which was radiant with happiness. Even in her sleep, the girl was still calling Katajiri's name. He knew Sachan was so fragile, so adorable. Deep in his heart, something started to spread, little by little. Something warm, something joyful. Seeing Sachan's open clothes, Katajiri touched her cheek, and suddenly the girl murmured. Something painful. He couldn't stand it anymore. He calmed himself on the balcony. Suddenly Shino came asking what he was doing, with the air that was so cold. Katajiri vented his desire on Shino. In the middle of touching the woman's body, he admitted that he did not dislike Sachan. The girl was very precious, he thought he loved her. But not yet. Katajiri didn't even know why he kept having relations with Shino. He kept saying he didn't like Shino, no matter how many times the woman asked. However, Shino felt she had liked Katajiri instinctively. With her innocence, the young man said everyone needed sleep and food. Shino admitted that the two of them had no romantic feelings for each other. But there was nothing wrong with that. Katajiri agreed. Shino pulled the young man's nape and said no need to worry. Katajiri could return before morning. Only separated by a thin wall, the room where Sachan slept, from the place where Katajiri had sex with Shino. The young man then wondered, was he included in the most despicable group of people, and did he really love Sachan? He had a hunch that soon Sachan would know her lover for who he really was. On that Christmas night, Misuzu grumbled on the street because her manager was really shitty and kept touching her shoulder disgustingly. She regretted ever accepting this job. She decided she had to see the stupid face of the culprit this afternoon and tell him about her worst day when Katajiri helped her align the position of the cardboard box. The snow must have started melting in Sachan's place and spring was in full bloom in Tokyo. Wakamoto said welcome back from the first school holiday to Katajiri. He was very excited for the joint class with other classes today. Wakamoto wondered if there would be some beautiful girls there. Seiko teased and said that was the only thing the bespectacled young man thought about. The lecturer in class asked everyone to form groups with predetermined members. A long blonde-haired girl at the front table turned around while crossing her arms. Her name was Misuzu Shugawa, second-year student. She admitted she was glad to meet them, but her face looked sullen. Wakamoto was frozen in horror, because the girl kept staring at them sharply the whole time. He whispered and guessed Katajiri had done something. Katajiri denied it, even though just a few minutes ago, in the corridor, the woman was looking for Group D. She even ignored Wakamoto's greeting and insisted on calling Katajiri, but admitted she didn't recognize him with an annoyed expression. Katajiri didn't want to bother. Wakamoto insisted that maybe his friend had forgotten something. Suddenly another man hugged Misuzu familiarly and asked why she was making such a scary face. Misuzu immediately got angry and didn't want to be touched by the man she called a playboy. The black-haired man just laughed and considered it a joke. Misuzu really couldn't accept if they were in the same group. She then glanced at the two young men who looked like idiots, because they shouldn't be rude to a senior. She introduced her name, Asahi Kurwaso, first-year student. Apparently they had the same part-time job and Asahi was her senior colleague. Misuzu just clicked her tongue in annoyance. After talking for a long time, Wakamoto found out that Asahi worked at a pub in front of the station. The black-haired young man then invited him to come and see for himself next time. However, Misuzu forbade it. Finally, Asahi realized that Misuzu was still angry at him for something. Of course, the woman admitted she was grateful, because he had introduced her to a weird job, she said with a fierce face. Asahi told the story that there was an acquaintance who had a restaurant and they asked if he knew beautiful and hardworking girls. So, he introduced Misuzu and in the end the place turned into a cosplay cafe. Misuzu had to become Santa-like when she met Katajiri on Christmas Day, become a waitress even in the limited edition Valentine's Day, as a cute high school girl. Asahi told it while laughing. Now, Misuzu was called for every event. Misuzu was annoyed and emphasized that it was not a joke. Regardless of what she said, somehow she still accepted the job. Misuzu was a true goddess. The woman reasoned that Asahi always told her that they were short on staff. That made Asahi praise her kindness. So, he invited the second-year student to eat together after this. Before he finished explaining the plan to get to know Wakamoto and Katajiri better, Misuzu hurriedly left them just like that. Asahi regretted her departure. He leaned his butt on the edge of the table and invited the two young men to eat together, or he also suggested calling other girls to accompany them. Wakamoto agreed, but it wouldn't work because Katajiri had a girlfriend. Asahi couldn't believe it, he never expected it. Wakamoto didn't understand what he was thinking. Asahi then laughed and explained that it wasn't surprising, especially since Katajiri was indeed a cool guy. In that case, he invited them to buy food first. when Wakamoto was thinking where would be best to go at this hour. Asahi instead interrogated Katajiri first and asked if his girlfriend was studying at this university. Katajiri answered that they only came from the same town in Hokkaido. Asahi laughed with satisfaction and called it a true long-distance relationship. Katajiri didn't say anything, but the black-haired man's laugh kept echoing. Asahi approached. He regretted the fate of himself and Katajiri, who were exactly the same. Time passed so fast. He wanted to know what Asahi's words meant, but the young man in front of him only smiled widely without answering. He left while saying it was just a misunderstanding. Spring had arrived. Katajiri could feel the frightening gust of wind blowing past his ears. As if whispering, "Know yourself." Asahi was still laughing while urging Katajiri to hurry. Wakamoto invited Seiko and Katajiri to go to the cafeteria right now. Today's special menu was fried pork cutlet. Katajiri remained still, his mind filled with Asahi's whispers. He couldn't stop thinking about what the young man had said to him the other day, about them being exactly the same. Not far from him, Asahi noticed the new perfume worn by a girl and made the owner blush and disbelieve at the same time. He admitted he smelled a good fragrance. No wonder that teasing made the two girls in front of him happy. He said goodbye to them because there was a good class that would start soon, so it was time to let go of everything. They were reluctant to let go, even hoping to be in the same class as him. Asahi himself did not give a definite answer, because he was not sure Miku and her friend would help much in group work. Wakamoto finally saw Asahi and informed his friends. Asahi laughed seeing the two girls sulking. He then said see you later, then kissed Miku, making her scream in surprise. Katajiri didn't comment. Wakamoto jumped and said it was amazing. Meanwhile, Seiko realized that Asahi was one of the members of their group work. Katajiri walked alone. At the corner, he accidentally bumped into Misuzu with her friend, making both of them surprised. He apologized, but the girl got angry and told him to watch where he was going as she left. Katajiri asked them to wait. He handed over the handkerchief that Misuzu had dropped. The woman turned around and immediately snatched it while thanking him with an annoyed expression. On the handkerchief there was a rabbit picture. Asahi came and commented that Misuzu was acting spoiled as usual, but he admitted that the girl was very beautiful. Meanwhile, Katajiri said not too beautiful when asked for his opinion. Asahi knew it was a lie. Actually, he admitted he was targeting Misuzu. The more stubborn a girl, the sweeter later when she was with her lover. He wondered what it would feel like to have sex with her. Katajiri reminded that Asahi had a girlfriend, namely the girl who was with him this afternoon. With a wide smile, Asahi said the two girls were just his friends, even though of course they were still having sex. Regardless of having a girlfriend or not, a sweet girl was a sweet girl. Sometimes someone might think of being intimate with her, especially since they were fellow men. But Asahi became curious if Katajiri was different from all of them. Katajiri walked while checking his phone and opening the class group message. In it, Asahi apologized because the train trip was delayed. He forgot to submit his report, even though he had looked everywhere. Katajiri saw Misuzu alone. He then hurriedly approached and asked if the girl was also checking the line group. Misuzu immediately turned around and warned him not to startle her like that. Katajiri immediately apologized. It seemed the other two friends would be late. He offered to start first and Misuzu immediately agreed. Suddenly a ball was thrown, hitting the back of Katajiri's head, making him fall on the girl in front of him. Misuzu screamed in annoyance because Katajiri was pinning her. She told the young man to quickly get up. Especially for a man, he didn't have enough core strength. Katajiri apologized and quickly got down. His hand accidentally touched Misuzu's thigh, making the girl immediately get up while covering her mouth with the back of her hand. Even her cheeks were already very red. Katajiri was fascinated. Even Misuzu's neck was bright red, and it was very adorable. The girl immediately slapped Katajiri's cheek because she felt very disgusted and hurriedly left. Katajiri finally found someone interesting, besides Sachan. Not long after, Asahi, who had just arrived, called Misuzu, making the girl say about his lateness. He apologized and guessed something had happened, but Misuzu didn't deny it. He wasn't sure, then asked Katajiri. Misuzu got angry again and admitted she didn't know, and didn't care. Asahi just muttered. Asahi kissed Miku and the young man was very excited today. He then apologized. Miku invited him to hurry to the hotel. But before that, she wanted dessert. They went to the shopping place and started choosing. Miku didn't know what was best to buy, while Asahi would also buy something. He then realized Katajiri's presence and quickly covered Miku's mouth, then took her to hide because it felt strange. Katajiri accidentally met Shino, making the woman admit she often came here. Asahi peeked from the shelf behind them when Shino said she came to buy shirataki, a kind of noodle made from potato flour. Katajiri immediately asked permission to come to her house. Shino didn't mind, but she asked about condoms because she had run out. Katajiri didn't mind buying more. In front of the cashier, he bought 4 packs, making Asahi laugh. After being released, Miku offered beef soup, while she complained she wanted hot pot. She was annoyed because the young man didn't answer and just kept laughing. Asahi explained he had just seen something very funny. Group D's project was almost entering a critical period. They also had to decide what would be included in the presentation. The presentation would be held next week. Katajiri would start working on the PowerPoint. He leaned his body toward Misuzu, making her cheeks blush. The girl immediately jumped when he called her. Katajiri commented on her red face, then asked about her condition or at least if Misuzu wanted to go to the nurse's office. Katajiri waited for an answer, making Misuzu look down and admit she was fine. She reasoned that it was a bit hot because it was really very hot here. Misuzu covered her mouth with the back of her hand. Asahi offered to buy her a drink. In the cafeteria, Katajiri complained because he felt buying drinks wasn't a job that could be done by 2 people. Asahi behind him called out, then showed a photo of Katajiri and Shino at the shopping place, because it turned out he was much lower than his expectations. Asahi knew the 2 of them were the same. He then asked if Katajiri would pursue Misuzu next. Katajiri didn't know what the young man wanted from him. In that case, Asahi asked to see a photo of his girlfriend. He praised Sachan, who looked sweet after seeing her photo. He also felt sorry for Sachi because Katajiri was cheating behind her back. Asahi then wondered if he himself would act that low if he were with a girl as beautiful as Sachan. But he could understand Katajiri's feelings. However, Katajiri refused to be equated with him. Asahi apologized, but they were indeed exactly the same. In some ways, Katajiri was even worse than him. At least Asahi was aware that he was trash. He thought Katajiri might need to realize what kind of person he really was. Asahi approached Katajiri and whispered that the young man should be on his side. He forced Katajiri to just admit it, then left him. Katajiri kept thinking about it. He didn't understand what he was doing, which was why it had become like this. They toasted after getting an all-you-can-drink package for 2 hours at a restaurant. Wakamoto was happy because their assignment was finally finished. Meanwhile, Asahi admitted he was a bit sad now, after everything was over. Wakamoto also doubted they would meet again after this. This might be the last time Asahi could hang out with seniors like this. Misuzu didn't understand. Katajiri didn't comment, while Wakamoto invited them to start drinking. Asahi was very happy to see Katajiri starting to sway, and it seemed he wasn't a heavy drinker. Misuzu didn't know if he was really like that after drinking. His face wasn't red at all, so Wakamoto didn't even notice. He thought they were the ones who forced Katajiri to drink. His hand moved to take the young man's glass. Asahi had an idea to lure Katajiri into telling them about his girlfriend, especially since Wakamoto also looked curious. They were very entertained to know that Sachan was a nickname for Sachi and Katajiri was called Kyo. Meanwhile, Misuzu looked gloomy knowing Katajiri had a girlfriend, then excused herself to go to the restroom. Asahi, who noticed the strange behavior, followed to the restroom. He realized Misuzu was shocked to hear the conversation earlier. After the girl came out, he asked if Katajiri was her type. Misuzu instead accused Asahi of being drunk too. She did hear that Katajiri already had a girlfriend. However, Asahi knew Misuzu wasn't having fun. Rather than someone who was already taken, he offered himself as the last option. Misuzu was disgusted, because Asahi was really bold to say that. Meanwhile, he had many friends with benefits he had now. Asahi smiled confidently and admitted he loved everyone equally and promised to take care of Misuzu. The young man gripped Misuzu's shoulders and stroked her hair. He was happy to see the girl becoming so restless, making him very fond of her. Misuzu told him to stop playing around, but Asahi instead held her waist and slipped his leg between her thighs, as she struggled while continuing to ask the young man to stop. Asahi opened the restroom door, causing Misuzu to fall backward. He apologized because the hallway wasn't the right place, then closed the door. Misuzu tried to resist, but she ended up sitting on the toilet because she panicked seeing Asahi approaching. Asahi thought the girl was already used to this kind of thing, but maybe it was her first time in a restaurant bathroom. Misuzu begged, until Katajiri then came and opened the door. The girl who was almost crying saw him asking what they were doing. Asahi admitted he was very embarrassed, then reminded that Katajiri should have knocked on the door first. He told Katajiri to lock the door. Katajiri stood silently at the doorway. Seeing Misuzu cornered, he said that this seemed not to be mutual feelings, even openly admitting disgust. Asahi turned around and approached. He remained cheerful, even though he had no intention of explaining. Besides, Katajiri had no right to speak. Katajiri pulled Asahi's shirt and emphasized that they were not the same. He swayed again and gripped Asahi's shirt tighter. While asking what the difference was between them, Katajiri vomited onto the black-haired man's shirt. Misuzu was so shocked and immediately shouted, calling him. In front of AIM restaurant, Wakamoto was still worried about Katajiri's condition and doubted the young man could go home by himself. Katajiri was sure, besides he already felt a little better now. However, Asahi complained because his poor t-shirt was forced to be sacrificed. Katajiri apologized with a sharp gaze. Asahi thought he really felt unwell. Then his gaze shifted to Misuzu, who was standing at the far left. He approached and apologized. He admitted he was just joking and really regretted it. Misuzu was silent for a moment, then said she didn't find jokes like that funny. It was just a wild guess, but Asahi thought that Misuzu was still a virgin. The girl was immediately shocked, but her cheeks reddened. She stared at Asahi with a trembling body. Asahi was also shocked and felt very bad now. Misuzu immediately shouted, telling him to shut up. Asahi and Wakamoto then left. Katajiri asked about Misuzu's condition, making the girl admit she would ask the same thing. Since they were going in the same direction, Katajiri would escort her home. Misuzu agreed. Campus. The first time getting drunk made Katajiri feel very bad. Even his head hurt. Misuzu then came bringing an energy drink. Regarding Asahi's words saying Katajiri had no right to speak yesterday, Misuzu wanted to discuss it, but then changed her mind, then excused herself and turned to leave. Before that, Katajiri thanked her. After replying, she continued her way to the corridor. Misuzu admitted she was annoyed while holding her cheek that felt hot. Shoko, who had just arrived, asked what happened or if something had happened. Before that, she offered to eat something sweet first. Shoko really didn't know what happened, but she was here to listen if Misuzu wanted. The long-haired girl was indeed a bit unenthusiastic about eating, but she still agreed to her best friend's invitation. Shoko was very happy, because eating something sweet would make Misuzu feel better. She asked what Misuzu wanted to order. She also informed her that there was a cafe that had just opened in front of the station. Misuzu herself responded unenthusiastically because her mind was full of Katajiri. She didn't know if Katajiri had to come and save her like that and appear right on time, especially when asking about her condition. Misuzu didn't want his kindness. Once upon a time, on Valentine's Day, after her chocolate was rejected, Misuzu, whose hair was still black during high school, was very desperate and tried to forget him. To Sachan, Katajiri informed her that he had found a new side of himself. He had never felt angry like when he caught Asahi and Misuzu in the restroom, and also learned how much alcohol his body could tolerate. The farther from Sachan, the more he learned about this new self of his. Katajiri had never even gotten drunk or felt any anger when he was with Sachan. He wondered if there was any change that Sachan found in herself, now that she was no longer with him. Sachan sighed while apologizing to Isazaki, who might have been waiting for a long time. The young man admitted he had just arrived too, then asked about her condition, before then inviting her to go. Sachan of course welcomed him happily. Katajiri said good night and arranged Shino's things as she came to his house. When opening the door, the woman offered a drink while bringing a bottle of wine. Katajiri told her that a few days ago he made a big mistake with alcohol. Shino said she was good at making people vomit, even though she usually didn't really enjoy it. Shino said they didn't need to drink, because she had bought all the snacks in the package in her hand at the convenience store, so she needed help. Katajiri agreed. After letting Shino in, he asked about what happened. Apparently, Shino got a call from her husband. This morning, he returned to the other residents. Katajiri remembered when he saw them caressing on the balcony. Kunikata said goodbye for a business trip and offered his wife to return home. At that time Shino admitted she liked it here. So, it was definitely their other house. Shino had never mentioned it, but she didn't mind if Katajiri asked. It wasn't something she had ever tried to hide. Kunikata was sent on a business trip suddenly. Shino had to pack her husband's clothes and suitcase, then hand everything over to his younger colleague who met him there. That was why Kunikata called. Kunikata couldn't even come home and do it himself. Shino then wondered if her husband was really that busy. This really annoyed her, so she dragged the wine bottle in her hand out of the wine cellar. Moreover, this one was quite good. Katajiri didn't expect Shino actually had a wine cellar in her house. In the end Katajiri agreed to drink. While enjoying the wine, they continued their conversation. Shino explained that she rented the apartment solely in her name, not her husband's as Katajiri had guessed. Their house was too big and she didn't feel at home when she was there. Even though it was her own house, it didn't feel like it. For her, this apartment was like a secret base. Shino tried to keep it secret from her husband, but it was discovered last year. Katajiri didn't comment. Shino, who was on the bed, leaned toward the young man sitting on the floor to feed him delicious snacks. She wanted Katajiri to try it. Katajiri almost forgot that he had been caught by one of his juniors. Asahi saw them when they were at the mini-market together. He also told that Asahi knew he already had a girlfriend. Shino guessed Asahi knew Katajiri had done something he shouldn't have. Katajiri also said that Asahi told him to be more aware of who he really was. He then asked what Shino would do if her husband found out. However, Shino wouldn't do anything and felt Kaname wasn't interested enough in her to care. She hoped her husband would be very angry. So, Shino asked what Katajiri would do about this younger classmate before this became too troublesome. Shino pushed Katajiri to the floor and sat on his stomach. She wanted to know if the young man wanted to stop, as she had guessed. Katajiri couldn't answer, especially since the woman immediately attacked him. He asked for time because his shirt was dirty from spilled alcohol. Shino promised she would buy him a new shirt. She stared at him deeply with languid eyes, then apologized. Katajiri remembered when Shino said there were no feelings between them, so he saw no problem with it. For the first time, for some reason he felt he really understood Shino's feelings. The woman got up to get a towel. Regret. Guilt. Shino also didn't have feelings like that. But that was only Katajiri's assumption. Asahi called Katajiri while waving his hand. Katajiri thought the young man needed money for dry cleaning. Asahi denied it, then asked if it was just his feeling or if Katajiri was acting cold toward him. Besides, he only came to say hello. Katajiri was sarcastic and asked what he wanted. The tall black-haired young man admitted he just wanted to convey his thanks. Katajiri cheated on his girlfriend, then unconsciously gave false hope to Misuzu. Honestly, that annoyed Asahi, and he didn't even realize at all that he was the asshole. Katajiri immediately corrected that he didn't give false hope to anyone. Asahi was very relieved when Katajiri stopped him in the restaurant restroom that night. Misuzu was almost hurt because she misunderstood the situation. Asahi felt very sorry for that. However, he wouldn't say more than that. If he had continued that night, Asahi was sure he would have regretted it. It seemed his feelings for Misuzu were much stronger than he thought. Misuzu was always startled every time she saw Asahi's face. It was painful for him to face that. Katajiri thought Asahi should just be happy, because Misuzu wouldn't ignore him. That was why Asahi wanted to say thank you. That was why he would respect him by keeping Katajiri's affair a secret. No answer. So, Asahi thought Katajiri didn't mind if he could tell this to anyone. He wondered what Wakamoto would think when he found out. Katajiri immediately forbade him. Katajiri stared at himself in the mirror while wondering when all this would end. Asahi had regretted what he did to Misuzu and Shino apologized before finally leaving. Meanwhile, he still insisted he was not the same as Asahi. He sat on the floor while reaching for the letter sent to him. He wondered what would happen if everyone found out about Shino. Katajiri sat curled up alone in front of the lit laptop and called Sachan while asking what was wrong with him. Campus. Asahi called Misuzu and wanted to apologize again here while handing over a paper bag. He promised he would never do something like that again and asked the girl not to worry. Katajiri was also very angry with him. Besides, Asahi admitted he would never touch a virgin. He set a sex policy because it was too troublesome. That itself was really annoying for Misuzu. The girl opened the paper bag and found various foods inside. Asahi explained that an acquaintance suggested he buy this, but he didn't mean to bribe or anything. These were various cakes and candies from Pierre Merm. He knew Misuzu liked things like this. The girl admitted it, making Asahi happy, but she was annoyed because the young man grinned like an idiot. Asahi laughed and admitted he was just thinking about how sweet the woman in front of him was. If only Misuzu was a loose-legged slut, then he wouldn't hesitate to catch her. Misuzu's clothes today were very revealing. Asahi praised her for looking beautiful. Misuzu got angry and said she would beat him up and reasoned that it was very hot today. That was all. Speaking of that, Misuzu noticed that Asahi had just gotten a haircut. His clothes were also always buttoned up to the neck. Asahi touched his neck covered by clothes and praised Misuzu's sharpness. He pulled his collar and showed the bruises there that wouldn't go away. Misuzu didn't know about that, so he explained that they were hickeys and bite marks. The girl gasped, making Asahi laugh. One of his dating friends, namely Miku, really liked leaving hickeys in visible places. She was beautiful, so Asahi just let her. Actually, he also had some in places Misuzu couldn't see. The girl then snapped because she never asked. From the phone call, Sachan informed him that summer vacation was almost here. However, the dates were a bit different from Katajiri's vacation dates. She knew her lover would work as a tutor at a cram school again this summer. Meanwhile, Sachan herself thought she might do volunteer work. She was invited by a newly met friend. But this year Sachan really wanted to visit Tokyo in the summer. The girl asked her lover not to worry. But this time she wouldn't give him even a single cent. However, as far as Katajiri knew, Sachan had lost all her part-time job income last year. Plus it was very hot in Tokyo. Sachan was sure she liked summer. Sachan had come all the way to visit Katajiri this spring. Now the young man should go there to meet her. Sachan insisted she wanted to go and told him not to worry. She then asked if Katajiri had talked to his father during New Year. The young man remembered one night he came home. His house was dark and quiet because the TV was off, but some bills of money were lying on the table. So he didn't talk to his father. It was already late at night for Sachan. She had better go help prepare dinner. Before the phone call ended, she asked Katajiri to send his line schedule for his free days during summer vacation. She was happy that Sachan could finally use her phone, making the girl laugh and admit she was learning little by little. A friend who was good with phones was teaching her, even things that weren't needed at all. Isazaki, the tech expert. The call then ended. Katajiri walked alone and accidentally met Misuzu. The girl asked what he was doing. Apparently Katajiri was heading to the supermarket, making Misuzu forget that they lived in the same direction. The young man then commented on Misuzu wearing glasses. Misuzu turned her face away and told him to stop staring and admitted she usually wore contact lenses. Katajiri sighed, because the girl looked fine. He said glasses also suited her. Katajiri did it again. For some reason, Misuzu reminded the young man of someone. Seeing the package the girl was carrying, he knew eggs were on sale today at the supermarket in front of the station. Misuzu was amazed. Katajiri even noted things like that. The young man admitted he had tried cooking for himself, but wasn't very good at it. Katajiri called Misuzu while pulling her hand and hugging her. Suddenly a car passed and splashed water onto the young man's back. After the car passed, Katajiri apologized and asked if her clothes were wet. Luckily Misuzu wasn't standing near this puddle. The girl looked up and called out, making Katajiri hurriedly keep his distance while apologizing. Misuzu didn't mind. She even thanked him. Lately, all Katajiri had done was save her. The young man sneezed, making Misuzu ask about his condition. Katajiri said he would go home first. Before leaving, Misuzu asked him to take off that top. Katajiri obeyed and took off his shirt, then left after saying goodbye. Misuzu saw the same bruise on Katajiri and Asahi's necks. She guessed it was also a hickey. All of that happened in spring right after Misuzu started college. Katajiri and his two friends were talking about the shop behind the university that had amazing ramen. Misuzu panicked. She became more nervous as they approached, until the papers in her hand scattered. She didn't know what to do. Katajiri knelt down to help pick up the scattered papers and return them. Misuzu was stunned, not believing she had vented her annoyance on him here. She thanked him after receiving her papers back. She didn't know what else to say. It had also been a long time since they met. Misuzu wondered if Katajiri remembered her. However, the young man just said goodbye and left. Seiko asked if Katajiri knew the black-haired girl with glasses and if she would come talk to them. Katajiri admitted this was the first time meeting Misuzu and he had just picked up her papers. Now, Misuzu knew it. Not long after, Mogami came waving her hand while apologizing for making her wait. Misuzu expressed her desire to dye her hair too, because she felt like an idiot. Mogami welcomed it and thought Misuzu would look beautiful. She then promised to introduce her to a good salon. Misuzu thanked her. The short-haired girl then asked Misuzu to call her by her first name, not her family name. She wanted to be called Shoko. Misuzu realized she was the only one who still remembered Katajiri after so long. Misuzu sat alone in a cafe. From what she heard at the party afterward, Katajiri said the last time he met his girlfriend was during spring vacation. If it wasn't from his girlfriend, then from whom? She wondered if hickeys took that long to fade. She propped her chin and wondered if Asahi knew about it. Whether it was really a hickey or maybe just an insect bite. Shoko suddenly called, making Misuzu startled. She knew Misuzu was daydreaming again, making her quickly apologize. However, for Shoko it didn't seem like a trivial matter and she guessed it was about Katajiri. Misuzu immediately snapped and denied it. Misuzu was too obvious. Of course Shoko could tell. Besides, Misuzu acted strange in front of the young man. As if she looked restless, like she was trying to hide something, or at least it looked that way. When they were in the same group for the class project, Shoko asked why Misuzu was so annoyed. Misuzu didn't expect Shoko to notice that. The short-haired girl said they were friends, so of course she was interested in what Misuzu was doing. Shoko wouldn't force her, but maybe Misuzu would feel more at ease if she just talked about it. If Misuzu was worried about something, Shoko wanted to hear it. Shoko had said this before, but Misuzu had never told her. If she really didn't want to talk about it, she wouldn't force her. Finally Misuzu said she couldn't talk about this while sober and invited her to go home. Shoko invited Misuzu to her house. She cheered for a sleepover. Katajiri suddenly sneezed. Wakamoto thought he had caught a cold. Meanwhile Seiko guessed it was because of the cold AC. Katajiri confirmed that possibility, besides it was quite cold on campus. Summer vacation was almost here, so Wakamoto reminded them that they should take good care of themselves, because they had to regain their spirits, so they could enjoy the vacation fully. Katajiri also informed that Sachan would visit here. When asked, Wakamoto really wanted to meet her. Katajiri showed her photo for a moment, but the girl looked like the calming and cute type. If there was a chance, maybe they could all gather and have a barbecue party. That would be fun. The two then said goodbye and Katajiri waved when they parted. Upon arriving at the apartment, he found an envelope in the mailbox. Sachan had gotten used to her smartphone, so Katajiri more often received line messages and phone calls from her. He entered the house and opened the box containing many letters. He now had quite a large collection of letters from her. While eating melon bread, Katajiri took one of her letters. Most had flower designs, but sometimes there were strange ones. whether it was when sitting in junior high or high school when Sachan told him that she liked flowers. At that time, Katajiri never imagined they would date for this long. At Shoko's house, Misuzu slammed the table with a drink can while cursing Katajiri, because right when she thought she could finally forget him, the young man appeared in front of her again. Shoko scolded Misuzu for drinking too fast. Ignoring her, the long-haired girl admitted she wasn't from around here. Shoko knew Misuzu moved here when she was in the middle of high school or something like that. Misuzu confirmed and mentioned Hokkaido as her hometown. Katajiri was one of her high school friends. Shoko really didn't expect that. For years earlier, Sachan, who suddenly slipped, finally fell near Katajiri. The young man asked about her condition, making Sachan admit she was very embarrassed. Katajiri extended his hand and helped her stand up. Sachan smiled while thanking him. Meanwhile, in the school building on the upper floor, two girls were watching their interaction from the window glass. They saw Sachan eat dirt and doubted her condition. Misuzu Sarazawa knew Katajiri, who was from the class next door. At that time, she was still 16 years old. She couldn't believe Katajiri's expression didn't change even in a situation like that. Katajiri was known as a handsome freshman. That became a hot topic among the female students since he entered school. Two girls saw him from the window while he was daydreaming in the schoolyard. They said he was very cute. That conversation made Misuzu stop walking and also look out the window. Katajiri looked handsome, making them hope to take his photo. Even third-year students tried to approach him. Katajiri was always surrounded by girls. Misuzu walked past two female students who were gossiping that the senior who approached Katajiri was really cheap. That woman was scary to her. On the bulletin board, Katajiri ranked as the top student, beyond Misuzu's expectations. The bespectacled girl also heard that Katajiri was very smart. The young man was like a character straight out of a manga. He had nothing to do with Misuzu, or at least that was what the girl thought. By a strange coincidence, she accidentally met Katajiri in the library and they ended up chatting. Up close, Katajiri was still as attractive and cool as usual. Plus very handsome. The young man admitted he often came to the library because he didn't want to go home. There was something mysterious about him. Katajiri commented on Misuzu, whom he saw for the first time without glasses, and said she looked better like this. The girl was immediately startled. Besides that, he was also a flirt but didn't realize it at all. Even though she was sure Katajiri didn't consider her important, she could accept what the young man said just like that. In an instant, Misuzu fell in love with him. Misuzu confessed her feelings to him on Valentine's Day, even begging the young man to accept her chocolate. However, Katajiri refused and admitted he already had a girlfriend. He explained that he had someone he had been dating since junior high school and kept it secret from everyone. He apologized for doing something that made her misunderstand. His friend warned that Katajiri should be careful when interacting with women. In the middle of the blizzard covering the streets, Misuzu stared at the plaster Katajiri gave her on Valentine's Day at school, which she should have stopped giving something like this. Before leaving, Katajiri gave it to her and said that maybe the plaster could help. The blood would soak into it. He knew Misuzu had a paper cut. The girl then thanked him. Katajiri apologized and said see you again at the library. Now she admitted she had lied to him for some reason. Misuzu cut her finger with a kitchen knife. She felt stupid and didn't even know Katajiri had a girlfriend. She could have known if she asked someone. Katajiri even refused to accept the gift, making her feel very embarrassed. Misuzu turned her head when she heard Sachan and Katajiri talking while walking toward her, making her hurriedly avoid them. Sachan admitted she wanted to give chocolate to Katajiri and was just going to stop by his house. The young man didn't mind, besides his father was also coming home late today. Sachan cheered happily and was a bit too excited. She asked Katajiri to wait for her. Seeing her, Misuzu realized that Sachan was very cute. From the beginning, she knew she had no chance. She only found out later, the reason Katajiri came to the library several times a week was just to kill time until his girlfriend finished club activities. Apparently, the reason they hid their relationship was because his girlfriend had been harassed by some girls at school. Not long after, Misuzu moved to Tokyo because of her parents' work. Her parents remarried and her family name changed. From Misuzu Serizawa to Misuzu Shugawa. Her entire life changed too. Then, right when she tried to start a new life and repaint her dark and bittersweet past. By coincidence, Misuzu met Katajiri at university. The figure remembered from her youth. For a moment her mind went completely blank. So many thoughts swirled in her head. But Katajiri didn't even realize it was Misuzu and admitted to his two friends that it was their first meeting. Honestly, it was shocking. After that, Misuzu dyed her hair and pierced her ears. Wearing clothes that weren't her style, Misuzu even took a part-time job introduced by a senior student. She had nothing to do with Katajiri. She would cut off all feelings related to him. Or at least that was what she thought. Misuzu always saw Katajiri on campus, even though the place was very large. Misuzu even accidentally met him and his girlfriend during their Christmas date. She, who was cosplaying as Santa at that time, watched Katajiri dating the same girl all this time. She thought about why she had to meet Katajiri today of all days. Her carelessness made the cardboard almost fall. Luckily, the young man immediately helped. The worst part, they ended up in the same group for the class project. Misuzu explained they had met on Christmas. Not once, but twice. She was annoyed and said Katajiri was really bad at remembering faces. She even accused him of not caring about other people. Approaching the second half of the project, Misuzu started to forget the heartache and instead became angry because she had to suffer alone because of Katajiri. When Asahi laughed at the nickname Sachan, she immediately knew Sachan was the girl Katajiri brought on that Christmas date. She couldn't even give the right response. The more often she interacted with Katajiri, the more Misuzu started to remember her past feelings for him, past memories. When Katajiri praised her appearance wearing glasses on the street that time, Misuzu warned herself not to let Katajiri's words affect her. She knew the young man didn't realize at all what he was saying. Something stirred inside her. She couldn't believe a man like Katajiri would cheat and really didn't know how she should feel. If he was really cheating, Misuzu didn't know what to do. Cheating was a very despicable act. Katajiri was really a bastard who didn't realize her feelings. All Katajiri needed to do was continue loving his girlfriend. In that case, Misuzu could give up on him. But now she couldn't stop thinking, what if Katajiri cheated with her? Misuzu hated that terrible part of herself. Shoko called her. Misuzu covered her mouth and started crying. She admitted her feelings for Katajiri and that she had always loved him.